Hey, Goo Crew, it is Yuri Hauswald, and I am really excited to be chatting with you today because we are going to be bringing on someone who just summited the highest mountain on Earth, Zach White, and he's going to be joined by Michelle Zhang. And I'm really excited to chat with them about their experience. Let's see if we can't bring them on here. One second. Be patient with us. But if you have any questions today, make sure that you leave them in the comments.
Hey, what's
Sounds
up?
like,
How's it
oh, there's
going?
Zach right there.
Good. Yeah,
How you
nice to meet you
doing? It's nice
too.
to meet you. Is Michelle going to be joining us separately or
She
with you?
said she just dropped. I think she's gonna be joining right now. We were just on the call. We were just on a phone
All
call.
right. Michelle, if you're out there, send me an invite. Let's see. Maybe there's one right here. There it is. Accept.
Cool.
Here we go. I think we'll have all three of us on now.
Hey,
Hopefully.
Hey, what's up?
Ah, there we are.
nice to
Nice
meet
to
you,
meet you,
Yuri.
Michelle. I'm Yuri. So, unlike other IG lives in the past, I'm not leading the charge on this. We're going to let Michelle take over here. And I definitely have a whole bunch of questions that I want to
Yeah,
hit
for
you with,
sure.
Zach, and hear how you accomplish the pinnacle of pinnacles in, pun intended, right, in mountaineering. So I'll turn it over to you, Michelle, and you can kick us off, and I'll
Yeah,
jump
looks
in
like
when
we've got
appropriate.
quite a few people joining. So, yeah, I guess I've never, like, if people ask questions, we'll be able to see them at the bottom, right? I,
I'll keep an eye on the comments and look for questions, and you can focus on what you're
yeah,
doing, and we'll just
cool.
teamwork it here.
Zach, did you just come back from surfing? You look like.
Yeah, I did. I have some surfboards in the back right here, but yeah, we just got back from the beach.
Nice. Well, cool. Thanks everyone for joining. Yuri, I don't know, did you have a chance to introduce yourself earlier or?
I did. People who've watched these before know who I am. So I'm the lead athlete manager for Goo Energy Labs. But
Great.
this is your
Yeah,
show
thanks. I'm
today.
Michelle. I'm an ultra runner, a good friend of Zach's. And we have Zach here today, who's a ski mountaineer and ultra runner who just came back from Everest, like maybe a week, 2 weeks ago. So we've got a lot of great questions for you, Zach, that we've collected. Zach, I don't know if you want to say anything.
Yeah, I mean, I'm stoked to be here. Shell and I, we've done a ton of running, ton of mountaineering together. So I'm happy to have her kind of as the MC today, and happy to be joining. I've been a longtime Goo user since probably like 6 or 7 years now. Use it to fuel a lot of my trips. So I'm super pumped to just always be collaborating with Goo on new flavors that are coming out, just being an ambassador on the team for the last few years. But yeah, it's really part of my nutrition plan and things like that. So I'm always stoked to like share my experience and help other people get into mountaineering. So that's kind of why I'm here today, and just sharing my experience, pretty chill, and seeing if I can provide any value in those regards. So yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, that's actually how Zach and I met. We were both on the Salty Squad and did a trail run together and connected since then. It's been great. Cool.
I didn't realize you two were salty squatters. That's so
Yeah,
rad.
definitely.
And that's
And
how you
Oh
met.
yeah.
been on a few like multi-day adventures, and I've noticed that all Zach eats are goos. Like that's his primary diet.
Yeah, all of my friends like all the time are just like, Zach, you need to eat actual real food or else you're gonna like pass out one of these days.
Yeah,
Like it's either a goo or it's some sort of like gummy bears or like peach rings. Like I'm just all the time just sugar. For
yeah,
some reason my body runs on it and I can just keep going.
I need to chime in. I need to chime in real quickly because your former team manager Noah just chimed in and said, "Squad stars, way to summit, Zach."
Yeah, thanks Noah. It was awesome working with Noah the last few years too. Back when he was on the team. But yeah, happy to be here.
well, on that, Zach, so like how much goo did you consume on Everest?
Oh my gosh. I like all of my trips I always bring like probably 10 to 15 pounds of goo products. On this one, like we could actually ship our bags to base camp like via like a yak system, like a yak shuttle system. So like I probably brought 20 pounds, like a full canister of like the 24 servings of Roctane. Probably 50 gels, probably 20 or 30 of the goo chews. And then I ended up just like loading just a bunch of other just stuff that I had, like some of the electrolytes. But yeah, probably 10 to 15 pounds of it at least.
I did see someone ask if you shared goo with the Sherpa.
Oh, I did offer, but they're very much like they only eat like rice, is like rice and lentils. So they typically don't eat the Western foods because I don't think it sits well with their stomach.
Makes sense.
Yeah. But
yeah.
Yuri, did you have a question?
Oh yeah, sorry.
I do. I'm going to jump in. Sorry, Michelle, and I don't mean to cut you off. I have so many questions here, but I'm just curious about, and maybe I'm getting ahead of myself here, but about your relationship, since we were talking about your Sherpa, and it was Lapka Dawa Sherpa. Like, had you known each other previous to this trip, or did you just meet at base camp? How did that
Yeah. So
relationship come
typically
about?
with Everest is like you're joining an expedition team, unless you're like going off and doing kind of like a one-off, like no oxygen ascent or something that's like a little bit different. So typically you're joining an expedition team. So I joined a team, this company called Summit Climb, really good, like they had like, it was like a budget option, but had pretty much all the amenities that they normally have. And so when you join, like you do this base camp trek all the way up to base camp, through the Kumbu Valley, beautiful hiking, kind of like you can do it kind of on your own or with the group. So like I did it with a small group of people. We got to base camp and the Sherpas were already all there. So I personally didn't know any of the Sherpas before I got there. But while you're there, you're eating and dining, and you're kind of like building rapport with the local people. So, and like you don't actually get like assigned a Sherpa unless you pay for a personal one. So typically you're just kind of there, and the expedition guides will be like, "Hey, this guy's going with you today. Then tomorrow it might be another guy." But for the actual summit push, typically that's when they'll assign you one person, so you can really have like a one-on-one with them. And for that trip, I think I knew him the whole trip, but like the last 5 days is when we were on the summit push together. It was just him and I, like at camp 3, 4, and then to the summit. Our group was a little bit ahead of the other teams. We were just a little bit more acclimatized. So we went up, it was just him and I, like no other Western guides or anything, just going for the summit. And then we still like message on was it WeChat or WhatsApp or something. So yeah, really cool guy though.
That's cool. I mean, you have a friend for life. You guys have gone through just like a monumental experience together. So you are bonded
Yeah.
now for life. That's really cool.
No, that's totally
I'll
fine.
let you go.
Ask all the questions.
Sorry.
Yeah, you guys summited the highest point in the world together. I mean, so what was your training plan like?
Yeah, so like I'm kind of all over the place with my training. I usually try to just have like big, broad goals for training of like by this day I want to have completed this many feet of elevation gain. But I've like built a pretty good baseline of fitness through just running. I started with just regular running back in 2016. Started doing like half marathons and marathons, and then over time I've just built up a pretty good base of running. So I always try to incorporate maybe 15 to 30 miles of running every week. And then I was going to the gym doing like weightlifting, just to make sure like core is strong, arms and upper body is strong, because a lot of times like you're what they call jumaring. So there's a huge portion of the climb is all fixed ropes. So you have what they call a jumar, and it's on the line, and you kind of just ascend with that. It was like captures all the progress. So you have to have like a decent upper body strength too. So you want to have like fitness, cardio, and on bigger mountains, more muscle means your body's using more oxygen, which is not great. You want those because there's so little oxygen. So the recommendations that I got were stay lean and stay fit and stay like high cardio. Nice puppy there, Shell. So that's kind of what I did, is I stuck to that and like made sure all of the other parts of my body were strong, but not too like muscly, because you end up losing a lot of weight.
Yeah.
I just want to emphasize for those who didn't pick up on that, you've been training for this for like 6 or 7 years. This wasn't just some like fly by night, like, oh, I think I'm going to go hit Everest this weekend. You started planning for this a long time ago. Was there something early in your career that like sparked your interest in going for Everest? Have you always been a mountaineer? I'm just
Yeah,
curious,
that's
like,
a
what
great
was it about
question.
Everest?
I actually watched a movie, I think like the movie Everest, based on the book that's like Into Thin Air, which is based on an actual like series of events that were true, a huge expedition, just essentially a lot of people died and there's a lot of like disasters that were happening. But I watched that movie and I was about to graduate college and I was like, you know what, I need like something in my life that's going to be interesting, fulfilling, as well as like this goal. And that movie kind of inspired me, like mountaineering in general. Like, oh, this looks like a really cool thing. You learn teamwork and leadership. So I was like, I'm gonna hit Everest by the time I'm 35. Like that was the goal, and I use that as a north star. I think always just like waking up in the morning, like, okay, I'm gonna do this big thing, and every day, like you make a little bit of progress towards it. Like you start running, and when you're like really exhausted at the end of your run, you're like, I'm gonna hit Everest, and I know I need to go a little bit harder right now. Like you can just in your mind be like, I need to push a little bit harder right here. So you can use that to propel your motivation. Um, and that really like became the North Star. And then I learned all these other skills, and then over time became like super self-sufficient. So like I went and climbed Denali last year, which is the highest point in North America up in Alaska. And for that, you need to be, it was just me and my friend, Steven, and we were on the rope team on skis together. And there's so much complication or like complicated knot rope systems that you need to know, pulling sleds and expedition guiding and planning, that like all of that leading up to the actual Everest trip, like gave me so many experiences and gave me so many tools that I can use once I was actually on Everest. So when it came to Everest, it was like, I felt over prepared in a lot of ways. Because Everest is like, there's so much support through the Sherpas and the guides, that like you don't necessarily need to lead the whole expedition. You need to be there. You need to show up fit and like be able to like be comfortable in these environments. But yeah.
I mean, that obviously speaks to your 6 years of preparation, because I mean, like hitting Everest is like surfing Jaws or something like that. You know, I mean, going
Yeah.
like as big as you can go, and the consequences for failure are possibly death, like you said, into thin air. I mean, multiple people died on that expedition.
No,
Back to you,
yeah,
Michelle.
I know that there was a crazy ice fall that you saw, Zach. Like, can you describe a little more about that?
Yeah. So there's a certain section between base camp and camp one that's like, if you've ever heard about anything about Everest or like watching movies, it's called the Khumbu Icefall. And it's just this gnarly, like I think 3 or 4 thousand feet of just huge ice blocks. And it's like the end of, I don't know exactly what the term is, but at the end of the glacier, when it's kind of going over like a huge cliff, like just huge ice blocks that are the size of houses or semi trucks that are like falling down the hill, and they move it like 3 or 4 feet per day. So you have to navigate all the way through this, and it's pretty difficult. And there's like these double ladders, or like ladders that they like lay over across like some of these huge blocks, and there's like super deep crevasses. Um, yeah, there's somebody that I think a Sherpa might have fallen in one, because the Sherpas are trying to go really light and fast. They don't always clip into everything. They're trying to like speed through these things, the ice fall. And there was a Western woman who I think fell into a crevasse like off of a ladder. And I think they were both okay in the end, but like they needed to be like helicoptered out and like shipped down the mountain essentially. It's pretty crazy. There's a lot of people up there, and I would say a lot of inexperienced people. I'm not going to say I'm like a professional mountain guide or anything, but there's a lot of people that like they just might not have done enough training, or didn't have kind of what they needed, like the tools in their toolbox, and have the comfortability of being on a mountain like that. So there's some people that just ended up getting hurt. But that's every year.
So Tamara asked, I mean, this is a good segue, I guess, after you talked about some folks falling into crevasses. Did you have any freak out moments, I guess, on your
Yeah, so there
summit?
was one major incident that was pretty difficult, and then there was another minor one. I'll talk about both. But the first was on my actual summit attempt. I got all the way up to Camp 4, which is at 26,000 feet. And typically you're using supplemental oxygen, like 98% of the people are using supplemental oxygen. So it's like bottled, you have a face mask on, and like that helps you get to the summit, because above 8,000 meters, it's something called the death zone, where there's not enough oxygen in the air, in the atmosphere, to actually provide you the oxygen your body needs to stay alive. So once you're above that point, you're slowly dying if you don't have oxygen. So I always want to come back, and I think like this is typically, I mean, 8,000 meters is a really high mountain. I don't want something to go wrong. So I was using supplemental oxygen, and on the actual summit attempt, I was using oxygen, or what I thought was oxygen, and I was trying to walk just like a flat line from Camp 4 all the way up to kind of like the wall where it starts going up towards the summit. And I was like out of breath, like I was hyperventilating just from walking. I was like, what is going on? So I stopped, I talked to my Sherpa, and I was like, hey, we need to like stop, and I think there's something wrong with my regulator or my mask, because I'm not breathing. And the one thing is, like, everybody was passing me just like left and right, and I'm like, I don't usually get passed. Like, I'm usually like either at the group or like trying to charge ahead, and like right now literally everybody's going by me. Like I couldn't keep up with anybody, and like I stopped and was like, okay, we need to address this. They changed out the mask. They just like switched out the tube to a new mask, and I'm like, I tried to walk again, and like still was hyperventilating. I was like, what the heck? So we got, what was it? It was probably like less than a tenth of a mile from the tent. And like, I was like, we need to turn around right now, or there's going to be a problem in about a half an hour, because I can't move. You don't want me up there like when I'm just stopped. And the way that the Sherpa's like pay structure work is that they have something called a summit bonus. So if they get their client up to the top, back down safely, they get a really hefty bonus, and it's really good for them. They can like provide, it's like maybe a month's salary, almost like 1 or 2 months of salary. So it's in their best interest to get you up. And like, he just thought I was kind of tired, and he's like, hey, like, we'll go really slow, like it's okay, you don't have to worry about it, it's fine. And I was like, no, there's like an issue, we need to turn around. And like, you could tell in his face, he's like, oh my gosh, we're not going to summit, I gotta go back down, all this effort this season, like I'm not gonna get my summit bonus. And I was like, I don't really care, my safety's like most important right now. I'll do whatever it takes to like make sure I get down safe. So even if that means not summiting. So in my mind, I knew there was one more day of like a good weather window that I could summit the next day. And I was like, I have enough oxygen for the next day. We're going to go sleep, and then we'll wake up tomorrow. We'll do this again. So we get to the tent. I'm like out of breath. I like take off my crampons, which are like these, if anyone's not familiar, it's just like these really pointy things on the bottom of your feet, because I didn't want to ruin my tent. And then I literally just like collapsed in my tent. I still had my whole suit on. My boots were on. I had all of my gear was still around, like my harness. And I just passed out. And then I woke up probably 15 times, 20 times throughout the night, because I couldn't breathe. I couldn't sleep. I had a headache. And like the whole night I was like looking at the regulator, where there's a little dial that says like how much oxygen is in the tank. And I was like tapping it because it wasn't moving. And in my mind, I'm like, all right, like I'm up at Camp 4, 26,000 feet without oxygen. And like, I couldn't breathe. I couldn't sleep. My mattress started deflating. Like every 15 minutes I'd have to blow it up. And then my Sherpa is over here, and like, he's just passed out because he's exhausted too. So finally, long story short, wake up in the morning, change out the regulator. The regulator was broken, and it wasn't giving me any oxygen, or at least a trickle of it. And the next morning I like switched it on, switched it over, and then I put it on, immediately felt better. And I passed out for like 3 hours and just slept. And then went on like to go summit like later that night. But like, that was like, it was very scary, because like in your mind, you're just kind of in a dream, and you're trying to make decisions, and you're just not really thinking things through. But yeah, that was probably the most difficult part. And then there was another instance of something that was like more of a problem, is like there's so many people, so you're attached to these like fixed lines via one carabiner, because you're trying to go fast and efficient. And sometimes like you'll be on the line, and you're 2,000, 3,000 feet on this crazy steep, like Lhotse face, and you eventually like will get to a point where somebody like unclips you so that they can go around you or something. And I had a couple instances where like I was like always paying attention to my carabiner, and like someone would try to unclip it, and you're just like, you don't want anybody touching your stuff. And there's a couple times where I was like, bro, like what are you doing? Don't touch it. And then they like play it off as if they're like super important or something, like, oh yeah. So that's always scary when somebody touches your stuff and you're not ready for it. But no crazy incidences like that that led to anything bad.
I would say a lack of oxygen. I would say a lack of oxygen in the death zone is pretty freaky incident.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you got through that.
Yeah, definitely. And like having to make like the decision to know your body, I think is very important. And like when I was on Denali, I was in similar situations where I'm like, it wasn't about oxygen, more about like your level of energy, but just knowing your body. And if you don't know what your body's telling you and like how to be assertive about those decisions, like if you don't have that leadership ability, then things are going to start going wrong, like, and you'll end up going up. And but yeah,
I think that's a good lesson or reminder for all of our listeners here, is to be really aware of your body, right? As athletes, that's one thing that we're good at, is knowing our bodies, but then respecting what it is or isn't giving you. And the fact that you respected that you were having issues like that close to the top and went back, like, kudos to you for listening to that.
Again, like anything from like heat stroke to dehydration to just being without oxygen, like listen to your body, and it'll help you a lot.
Yeah, I guess that's part of like the training too, right? Is just like knowing when you need to turn around, or like Yuri is saying, just like training your body and understanding everything. Yeah,
for sure.
You mentioned that it was pretty crowded. I know we got a few questions of, is it as overcrowded as people do say, like, and all the pictures have shown?
Yeah, so this year was actually much less crowded. So there's typically 450 permits for Everest, and then usually like 100 permits for Lhotse, which is a mountain that's like right next door, and you can kind of double them up in like 24 hours. But
Hey?
there was points.
Sorry, Zach.
Sorry, what's that?
Did you say 450 per day? Permits per day?
Oh, 450 per season.
Per season, okay.
Per season. But like on top of that, you also have Sherpas that are like bringing bottles of oxygen to different camps and teams. So like typically you're going to see like 1,000 people on the mountain. And with this year, because there's some like global things that have been going on, like different things that have been happening. Some of the different countries weren't sending anybody to go climb, so there was only like 250 or like 280 climbers, so much less. But there was still some sections that were bottlenecks, that are always bottlenecks. It's like one rope, and you have people coming up, you have people coming down who are finishing with their summits, and you're essentially like trying to go on top of each other and like elbow your way up. So you do still see bottlenecks, but it didn't feel crazy crowded. Maybe for one day it was like pretty bad, like you were like in a huge line of people. But the actual summit, like we summited at 3:30 a.m. We were some of the first people on that day, like first group, so we didn't actually see a lot of people until we were going down.
Yeah, that picture that Goo posted, is that you at the summit?
Yeah, that's me.
That's pretty sick, yeah.
Yeah.
That looked like a pretty magical moment. You said hardly any winds. You were catching the sunrise. I mean, you couldn't have timed
it was
better.
like one of the best weather windows I think that Everest has seen in the last like 10 years, according to my guides. They were like, like 0 wind. And the best thing is, on that night, we ended up summiting really early, because my Sherpa thought I was going to be really slow, so we started way too early, because he's like, oh, we had the same issue last night, we're going to start even earlier. I'm like, once I have oxygen, I'll be fine. But so we summited at 3:30, and like there was a full moon the whole night, so you could see, I could probably see 50 miles at night.
Wow. And
no wind, nothing. So it was almost as if it was like a black and white version of climbing in the day. It was crazy. And then what was even crazier is there was like all of these isolated, like either heat thunderstorms or like full on thunderstorms, probably like 30 or 40 miles in the distance. So like the whole night you just see these like crazy flashes. And it was like every 2 seconds there'd be like lightning. It was ridiculous.
That sounds so magical.
Yeah, it really was.
So I have a question about the mechanics of fueling, because I think Roxanne Vogel, who works in R&D at GOO. She holds the record for a lightning ascent up Everest, and I had the honor of interviewing her. And she talked about, ironically, right, she works for GOO, how hard it was for her to eat. And actually she underate, and that nearly became a problem, mainly because of the logistics of trying to get the mask off. Did what she was trying to eat, was it frozen? So I'm wondering if you could sort of talk us through, like, were you using liquid calories? Were you stashing your gels in your armpits to keep them warm? Like,
yeah, and
how did that work?
This is for the actual summit, like the summit attempt, right? And they're not like the entire trip. Okay. Yeah.
Sure.
On that day, let's see.
Yeah, sure.
I had the luxury, quote unquote luxury, of having that one day where I had like the mask issue. So I was able to just sit all day in my tent, and like I was just pounding food. And at that point, I actually had oxygen with me, so like my appetite kind of came back. So I was just shoving food as much as I could in my body. But so I like pretty much was carb loading during the day, like to get my body fueled. And then when I was actually starting to like do the ascent, I think I brought like 3 or 4 gels, and then at least 2 goo chew packets. And I wish I had more, because like actually during the trip I was like eating them as much as I could because they were like so good. And I had the 2 goos, and whenever we'd stop for like a drink, like I would just like force down my mask because I knew I needed the calories. And like the goo chews were the best for that, because like they weren't like frozen. They were like pretty much in my down jacket, which was okay. I shared those with my Sherpa. He ate a couple of goo chews. And then I had this little 500 milliliter Nalgene, and I pretty much did like half goo Roctane and then half water in it, and just shook it up. And that's like also in your down jacket, so it stays pretty warm. And I would just chug that whenever I stopped for water, and that's all I drank the whole 12 hours. It was like one 500 milliliter Nalgene. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're not able to get in the calories you need, but you're just trying to get in whatever calories you can
exactly.
in that situation.
And like I actually felt pretty good the whole time, like on that diet, I guess whatever diet I was having. I didn't feel like I didn't feel like I was under calories. And usually for bigger like summit days, it's like you always expect to be a little dehydrated when you get back. You always expect to be a little hungry, really hungry. But I would say for the entire duration of the trip, like while you're at altitude, like I wasn't on oxygen the whole time. It was like for a couple days while I was doing the summits. So the entire trip was 6 weeks, and like you don't feel like you want to eat when you're above base camp. Excuse me. Even when you're at base camp, it's like you're still not that hungry. So I ended up losing like 10 pounds, and I was only like 145 to begin with. So like I didn't have that much to lose. But I came back, like I always felt like I was eating, like I never felt crazy hungry, but that's what altitude does to you, is like it really suppresses your appetite. And like I would try to force in extra pastas and extra, like they made us popcorn, so I would always be like, can you just make me a big bag of popcorn and I'll eat that as dinner. But yeah, you always feel like you're just kind of withering away when you're above base camp.
That's why it's the death zone. Unfortunately,
yeah,
right? So there's another question here from somebody, Tamara. I think she knows you. She said, did Moab help you know more about your body for this experience? I'm assuming maybe you did a big Moab training camp or
shout
something.
out to my Aunt Tammy.
That's Aunt Tammy. Hi, Aunt Tammy.
She's referring to, I did the Moab 240 last in 2020. So that's a ultra marathon.
What's that?
It's a 240 mile ultra marathon, like in this big loop in Moab, and I think it's like 29,000 feet of elevation. So it's like the same elevation like you ascend as much as like Everest is high. So it's kind of cool. It's like it almost evens out. But so it was 4 days of me just like walking like a zombie, and like trying to run as much as I could. But Shell was there to help with the crew, as long as my parents, and a couple other close friends. But yeah, it did help me understand my body, because I could think of it as almost like Everest is like this ultra marathon. It's like this long endurance objective, and a lot of the times, like you just need to know your body from like how much calories you need, or like when you need to start drinking. Um, yeah, yeah, I think it did. It's hard to kind of put it in words, but knowing your limits and knowing when you should stop or turn around like was very beneficial.
I would also argue exploring sort of the mental, emotional onion that you go through, right? Peeling back all those layers in an effort like that is helpful for you to understand what you're capable of in terms of like Everest as well. I'm wondering, like, maybe you could share a little bit with folks about the mental game of climbing something like Everest, because I think people often discount how important this is. Like, this is so much of anybody's athleticism. So maybe you could share
Yeah,
a
for
little bit
sure.
about
And
that.
like I'll start with when I did Moab, like that race is like very intense, and to the point where like the lowest point in my entire life, like by far, like of mental energy and like depletion, was during that race. I never got to that point on Everest. Everest was always much more of like this kind of like this dull pain over time, because you're always kind of like thinking about, all right, are my feet's blisters, are they okay? And is like, am I getting enough food? I'm getting a cough. Like, should I drink more water? Like, how do I alleviate that? And it's all these like little things that if you don't address them immediately, they will add up over time, and then it will cost you the summit. But yeah, like in terms of like the mental part, always being on that watch out for like what's going on is very draining. Um, it was good to have like camaraderie of like 15 other people who are trying to summit this goal, and a couple really inspiring people that I was climbing with, was really nice too. The mental game for just being kind of uncomfortable for 6 weeks or 2 months almost sometimes, is really difficult, because you're sleeping in this tent, and you have like a nice little mattress, but your tent floor over 6 weeks is actually like melting down because you're on a glacier. So that's hard to like deal with, and so you're just trying to like address all these things, and that becomes pretty mentally taxing. And then when you actually go to summit, you have to be in a really good headspace, or else like you can turn around, or like something goes wrong, like you'll want to turn around. And what ended up happening is I actually got sick. So we did 2 rotations. So the first one was up to Camp 3, and the rotation would just be like from base camp up through the Khumbu Icefall up to Camp 3. So that would be from like 17,000 feet at base camp to 23,000 feet at Camp 3. And the first rotation, I got sick at Camp 3, like with a really bad like chest, like lung issue, and I like had a lot of difficulty like breathing while I was trying to climb, and I was like at altitude trying to acclimatize. So it was like this trifecta of really bad kind of like hit to your soul. You're like, oh my gosh, like I have to go another 6,000 feet. This is going to be rough. So you come down from that rotation, you're supposed to, and we went back to base camp. And what you can actually do is go lower than base camp to some of these little villages that are in the Khumbu Valley. And in these villages, like they cater to the Western tourists, like backpackers and stuff. So there was one of the villages is at 11,000 feet. I literally got back from the rotation and I ran 20 miles downhill, because I knew there was like a pizza shop with like they served ice cream at this at this little shop. And I'm like, if I can get back there and like alleviate this cold, I can start healing. I'll just spend 4 days, and then I think they had like hot showers you could buy too. So it's like the whole mental part of it is like, how do you make yourself feel good enough to keep going? And for a lot of the people on the team, like they typically go down and do that anyway. But I was like, I need to make this happen. So I ran down. I got pizza and ice cream for 3 days straight with French toast, and it was glorious, because I was so used to just eating pasta. And at the end of that 4 days, I was like, wow, let's go. Like next rotation, feeling good. I still had a bit of a cough, but overall, it was like so good for my mental health. And I had a couple friends that ended up staying at base camp. And when we got back, after all of us had been like carb loading and eating, like it was just like a very different feeling because I knew like if I would spend another 4 days there, it like at base camp, I would have been in this like a sad mental state. And getting back, I was like, I brought some water and some chocolate for the guys that stayed there, and I was just like, I'm so glad I did this. I'm so glad I went down.
Self-care.
Exactly.
I love that. Pizza and ice cream, save your Everest,
Exactly.
you're summiting.
And the
That's the
Khumbu
story
Valley is
right
probably the only
there.
place you can go do like, you can go and like summit or try to be summiting like a mountain and like mid expedition go get yourself a pizza. It's crazy.
That's true.
Michelle, what else do you have
So
for
you
Zach?
mentioned that the camaraderie of people that you met and went with. Who was the most interesting person you met on the trip? I know you met a few all-stars.
Yeah, I mean like there was a European climber back or we met at Camp 1. I think he was like a La Sportiva but like athlete, but I think he was going on his like 16th or 17th summit of Everest, and I'm like that's pretty cool. He does like independent guiding. Um I think the Sherpas as like the team were just the most interesting because like these are like superhuman athletes and they're carrying like they're the size of their like thighs are just like professional bikers and they're just carrying 2 or 3 times the amount of weight I was. I'm like, I'm not even climbing this mountain. These guys have so much weight. Um and like some of them have one of the guys had summited I think 18 times. He's going on 19.
That's crazy.
And on top of that, like they're summiting Everest, but they're also like, hey, I'm gonna make you tea and like bring it to you while you're still like sleeping in the morning, so it wakes you up. And you're like, how are you this good at professional like athleticism, and then also like humble enough to bring food and like be very service oriented? And I just thought like they were so cool.
Was there a language barrier, or were you able to
Yeah,
communicate
they
with
all
them?
speak English. Like I think like the majority of them, and not really really well. It's all a little bit broken, but like through hand gestures and
Yeah.
facial expressions, like you can always be on the same page with them. Like they all kind of know, and like if you say like oh vegetarian option, they like know what that is, um, and yeah. So yeah, they're pretty good at English. Like there's some of them that are like very good at English, almost as like a second language.
Uh, I got another question for you, Zach. Would you have done anything differently?
Yeah, on the trip.
Planning, yeah, everything.
Like everything kind of really went according to how I thought it was going to go. Like I've done so much research. I was like obsessing over this mountain for 5 years. I that is a good question. I might have I don't know, might have like upgraded my tent to some one I could stand in in base camp. No, but no, actually everything went pretty well. And um, next time, or if I was ever to go back, I'd probably try to do it like independently, like not with a guide, and I think that would make it much more challenging. But for now, I think I did it how I wanted to, and um, I'm done for now.
I mean, that dovetails into a question somebody asked here. Damien said, "So what's next for you?" And that was going to be, one of my ending questions for you is like you've redefined like what's physically possible for you. So, like, how do you challenge yourself next? I would imagine you've already set your sights, hopefully, on some other big challenge. So, can you maybe share where your head's
Yeah,
going
that's a
now?
great question. And like I'm the type of person that if I don't have something to look forward to, then I get into my head, I get existential. I'm like, what is life? Like what are we doing here? So I always need something or else I get into that headspace. And that's I think why I set the goal to climb it. And I think now that I have a couple of routes that I could go. A lot of times everyone who's done Everest and Denali, they'll go to like the seven summits. It's like the highest point on each continent. Um, that typically is just very expensive and it's like all it's all guided. So it's typically not like how I want to continue climbing. I like the self-sufficiency. I like having 1 to 2 people that I climb with that I know like the ins and outs, I know the personality, know exactly how the experience is going to be, and we can communicate through issues and things like that. So potentially doing 7 summits, but like doing it on my own, like going down to Antarctica, doing like some of the like climbs there, and then the other one is like getting a lot more into rock climbing. So I've kind of like set a tentative goal of climbing like free rider on El Capitan in Yosemite, but that is like probably 3 or 4 years. I have a little bit of work to do. It's going to be a lot more physical, like upper body strength I need to build, and a lot of techniques and like outdoor climbing and big wall climbing, because it's like you're living in a portal edge. So that's kind of just the next progression for me. And I do have Bigfoot 200 coming up this summer, which is another 200 miler in the Pacific Northwest. So that'll be like around Mount St. Helens. I signed up for it last year when a friend did it, and I'm like low-key regretting it because I'm like so tired from Everest, but it'll give me some inspiration to like keep going this summer. And I don't want to fall out of having good fitness, so I'll start there.
So I have to ask, like, how much running is part of your training program? Because I mean, like signing up for a 200-mile run, I mean, that's massive. So I'm assuming that running is part of your weekly training program. Is that true? I know you surfed today, but
yeah,
like, did you
I
also
just
run?
cross train so much, and like I think physiologically, like my mom's a runner, and I think like our family is kind of built for running. So I think there is an advantage there, and I think like a biological advantage from birth. So I don't want to overplay that, but like I think having like ramping up into running, I'll probably do 20 to 40 miles, and then over the summer, like I really don't want to injure myself trying to jump back into like a marathon right now, like this week. But I will start like progressively training and doing some more like weightlifting, making sure my body's good, and then get like, heavy into it like midsummer, and then by August kind of be like slowly ramping down. But I would say like 200s are a lot of like half of it is logistics and like addressing like things that are going wrong with you, and then the other half is like the physical part of actually running and training. Because I think there's some backpackers that have done like the PCT, and they like just walk the whole entire thing just at a really steady pace. They never stop, and they become in like the top 10. So 200s are weird. They're like not really a race. It's more of just like a long backpacking trip that you're exhausted the whole time.
They're eating contests
You're eating
too.
the whole time. Like it's amazing.
No, that was
Michelle,
a great last
got?
question of just like what's next, and I'm excited for you, Zach. I also think it's funny that you're sort of downplaying how much you love running. Well, I mean, like
Yeah, tell the truth,
love
Michelle.
running,
Tell the
and
truth
literally
here.
on the way to Everest, I like messaged him about a race, and he's like, well, I really think about like Everest first and see where I am, like asking him if he's gonna sign up or not. And then I was like, okay, cool, like just text me when you're ready. And like literally 5 minutes after, he's like, okay, let's do it.
Yeah, it was like a 70K, the Tusher 70K.
That's not an easy one,
like,
but yeah.
I had no information. I'm like, oh, fine, Joe. Like, I'll sign up for this race. And then one of our friends was like, oh yeah, that was like the hardest race I've ever done.
Yeah.
Like, come on. But yeah, but I love.
I like the way you goal set. You just go big. You know, the 240 in Moab, Everest, this 200 in August. Like, I'm going to say you should try gravel riding next year and come out and do like Unbound 200 or something.
I've done a bit of like Ironman stuff. So I'm good at riding bike.
Oh, I'll get you an entry, man. If you're down, like, let's do this.
If it's next year, yeah, send me the info for it. Let me look at it before I fully commit. But, yeah.
I'd happily send that to you. So where if people want to continue to follow your adventures or learn more about both of you, like where can they find you, Zach?
Instagram, you can follow me here. I literally set up the Instagram handle for Everest like 6 years ago. Like you can scroll down to my first post and it's like the first day of training for Everest, but it's literally called.
What is your handle though, so they know, just in case?
ZACH. And then Michelle, go ahead.
Hard to forget.
And Michelle?
Mine is Shell Traveled.
Awesome. And do you have any
Yeah, I
upcoming
have. So I
adventures,
have a
Michelle?
70K that we both signed up for in Utah, and then I've got my first 100-mile race in September, the Whistler Alpine Meadows race. So I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, we're gonna crush
Nice.
some objectives this summer.
Right on.
We did Whitney last November. We've like ran around
Whitney.
Rainier. We did some really long stuff together. So it's been really fun.
Yeah, it's gonna be
It's awesome to have an adventure partner like that, somebody that you can go out and just knock out big things and know that you, like, trust.
I was gonna say know how to suffer with each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Right? Hopefully you're not both like in a low at the same time and the other person can bring the other person out and vice versa.
Exactly. And we both like enjoy social media too, like posting about our trips and things like that. So it's like if we have to stop and get like some nice photos of something or like a running photo, it's like we both can kind of play off each other on that. It makes it like I have some partners where I'm like, he's like, we don't ever take out our phones and we just run. And so it's like having somebody that kind of understands that is helpful too.
Well, I can appreciate both sides, but I actually appreciate the fact that you guys want to share your adventures with others because it's inspirational, right? It shows folks what's possible. You don't have to go out and run 240 miles in Moab, but like you could go out and do a 40 miler or something or whatever, but showing the how, the what, to make these things happen is ways that we bring other people into the sports that we love. You know, I'm sure there's people watching tonight that have been inspired maybe to go climb their local mountain or something like that. So that's the cool thing about having a chance to chat with you guys, is to share your passion with others, and hopefully it inspires more folks to get out there and chase their dreams, chase their limits.
Because I do remember the point where I was talking to an ultra marathon runner. At that time, I never thought I would run more than 13.1 miles. I thought the half marathon was going to be the longest thing I'd ever trained for. But now it's like you just keep adding the miles on. So it's all relative, and you can get there. You don't have to be a crazy athlete to be able to go and do these fun things. So I definitely love that message.
Yeah, same thing here.
Yeah, for sure. Well, if there aren't any other questions out there, I'm not seeing any other questions here. Let's see. Someone says, I know Sasha D, top rock climber. I'm not sure if that means anything to you guys. I don't know. I'm just scrolling through some last minute comments here. Somebody says, love your feed, so keep posting. So to that point that we were just sharing, like, people follow you because your adventures inspire them.
Yeah,
so keep doing it. Yeah. Oh, somebody's making fun of me now, saying reserving Zach a comp for Unbound. Yes.
Oh man, here we go. It sounds like fun.
Here we go. You're gonna have to get a gravel bike, bro. Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you both for sharing your passion with us. And Zach, like, hats off for making it to the top of the world. That's really impressive. And Michelle, thank you for helping. Yeah, thank you for helping share this moment. And folks watching, follow these two, get inspired, go out, challenge yourself, do something big. It's fun, right? When we scare ourselves, like, we surprise us, like what we're able to accomplish. Like I was saying, you've just redrawn the line of what you thought was possible for you. So I can't wait to see like what's next.
Yeah, I'm excited too. And anybody, like, feel free to reach out. And like, if you have questions about the trip, or if you have your own questions of own like summits that you want to do, or rock climbing, running, anything, I'm always like, I always get messages every day of like, oh, how do I do this? Or like, what gear should I get for this trip? Or I'm like very open to just having conversations like that. I pretty much try to respond to everyone that I can.
That's awesome, right? That because now you're sharing your knowledge, which will empower others to hopefully go out and be safe in the outdoors and push their limits. So it's great when you can be a teacher of sorts too.
For sure.
So right on.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, both of you guys. I'm so stoked you're on the squad, and Noah chimed in. I miss working with Noah, I have to say that. So I look forward to following your adventures, and I can't wait to turning you on to gravel next year.
Sounds like I'm already in. Let's do it.
Yeah, you're already in. There's hundreds of people who try to get in, but yeah, you're not in yet. Yeah.
Thanks,
So,
everyone.
all right. Thank you everyone for watching. Tune in next time. I'm not sure who we'll be talking to, but I appreciate your time, you two. Have a great night.
Bye.
Bye.